The Pacific Ocean does not announce its scale. It reveals it slowly, through distance that refuses measurement. From the western coast of Mexico, the horizon appears stable and near. It is neither. Beyond the fishing villages of Chiapas, the water extends uninterrupted for thousands of miles. Trade winds move steadily across its surface. Currents travel westward, quiet but persistent, linking the Americas to the scattered atolls of Micronesia. Between these landmasses lies one of the largest uninterrupted expanses on Earth. On nautical charts, the space between Mexico and the Marshall Islands is marked by depth soundings and current lines. In reality, it is an open system of wind, swell, and rotation. Objects carried into it do not remain still. They drift, sometimes slowly, sometimes without direction. Far offshore, there are no visual references, no buildings, no coastline, no fixed lights. The sky and sea share similar tones. Cloud cover erases contrast. Distance becomes abstract. Fishing vessels from the coast of Chiapas routinely move several dozen miles offshore. Their routes follow seasonal patterns of fish migration. Most return within days. The work is demanding but familiar. Engines hum, nets are cast, radios connect crews to shore. But once a vessel loses power beyond sight of land, it becomes subject to something larger than intention. The Pacific does not resist. It simply continues. In November 2012, one small fiberglass skiff left the coast of Mexico and entered that system. The skiff belonged to a fishing operation based in Costa Azul, a small community along the coast of Chiapas, Mexico. The men aboard were part of a routine system that supplied shark, tuna, and other pelagic fish to local buyers. Their work followed established patterns: depart before dawn, travel dozens of miles offshore, set lines, return within a day or two. One of those men was José Salvador Alvarenga. He was born in Garita Palmera, El Salvador, a coastal region where fishing was common work. Details of his early life remain limited in public record, but by his early adulthood, he had left El Salvador and relocated to Mexico. In Chiapas, he built a reputation as an experienced deep-sea fisherman. He was known locally by the nickname Cirillo. Alvarenga was accustomed to long hours offshore. The Pacific in that region can be unpredictable, but fishermen develop practical judgment about currents, wind shifts, and seasonal changes. Boats used along that stretch of coast are typically small fiberglass skiffs, around 7 meters long, powered by outboard motors. They are functional rather than robust. There is no cabin, no enclosed shelter, only an open hull, an icebox for storing catch, fuel containers, bait, and basic fishing gear. On the 17th of November 2012, Alvarenga prepared for another offshore trip. His intended partner reportedly did not join him at the last moment. In his place was Ezequiel Cordoba, a young fisherman in his early 20s. Cordoba had less offshore experience than Alvarenga. Accounts describe him as relatively new to deep-water fishing. The boat carried approximately 90 kilograms of ice, fuel for the motor, a GPS device, a two-way radio, fishing lines, hooks, and bait. The plan was straightforward: travel offshore to check shark lines and return within about 30 hours. Weather forecasts did not indicate extreme danger, though November falls within the latter part of the eastern Pacific hurricane season. Economic necessity shaped these decisions. Fishing in Costa Azul provided modest income. Missing a trip meant losing earnings. Small crews often operated despite uncertain forecasts, relying on experience and the assumption that short voyages could be managed between weather systems. Alvarenga had completed many similar trips. There was no indication that this departure differed from previous ones. The skiff pushed off from shore and moved westward into open water. Engines of this size produce a steady vibration. Once beyond sight of the beach, the coastline reduces to a faint line and then disappears entirely. For fishermen in the region, this transition is routine. The sea becomes workspace rather than landscape. Distance is measured in fuel consumption and estimated return time. By late November 17, the boat was far enough offshore that land was no longer visible. The men were alone on open water, but not unusually so. Other vessels worked similar distances. Radio contact connected them to shore. At that point, the voyage remained ordinary. Weather, however, was changing beyond the horizon. By the time Alvarenga and Cordoba reached their fishing grounds, conditions had begun to shift. Wind increased first. Offshore, weather systems can intensify with little visible warning from sea level. Swells rose and the surface became uneven. Rain followed. According to later accounts, the storm system that formed was not a named hurricane, but a powerful squall line associated with a broader, low-pressure system in the eastern Pacific. The small fiberglass skiff was not designed for sustained heavy weather. It rode low when loaded with ice and equipment. As waves built, water began entering the hull. The men attempted to continue working briefly, but conditions deteriorated quickly. They turned back toward shore. Rain reduced visibility. Wind altered direction and speed. Waves struck from inconsistent angles, forcing constant correction. At some point during the storm, the outboard motor failed. Reports indicate that the engine became disabled after prolonged exposure to water and strain. Without propulsion, the skiff lost steering control. The radio also ceased functioning. Whether due to water damage or battery failure is unclear in official accounts. Attempts to signal for assistance were unsuccessful. Contact with Costa Azul ended. Without engine power, the boat became subject to wind and surface current. In the eastern Pacific, prevailing currents generally move westward, away from the American coastline. Once the storm pushed them farther offshore, the natural flow of water began carrying the vessel outward. The coastline had already vanished from view. The men attempted basic damage control. They bailed water manually. They secured loose equipment. They waited for the storm to pass. Squall systems in the region can last hours or days. When the most violent conditions subsided, the sea did not return to calm. Instead, it settled into long rolling swells. Fuel remained on board, but without a functioning engine, it was useless. The GPS device eventually lost power. Ice in the storage container began to melt. Freshwater supplies were limited to what they had brought for a short fishing trip. In the days immediately following the storm, both men believed drift would be temporary. Fishing vessels from Costa Azul routinely search for missing boats when contact is lost. Mexican naval authorities were notified. Search efforts began. But small skiffs, when viewed from aircraft, are difficult to distinguish against open ocean. The Pacific does not offer contrast. As days passed, the boat continued westward. The point of return had already been crossed, though neither man yet understood the distance involved. When the storm system moved away, the Pacific returned to its steady rhythm. Long swells replaced breaking waves. Wind remained consistent, pushing from east to west. The boat drifted accordingly. In the first days after losing power, Alvarenga and Cordoba relied on what remained from their fishing trip. The ice melted quickly under direct sun. Freshwater was limited. Food supplies had not been intended for extended travel. They expected rescue within days. Search operations from shore continued briefly. Mexican authorities later confirmed that aircraft and vessels were deployed. No trace of the skiff was located. After a limited period, active search efforts were reduced. The Pacific surface area involved was too large. On the boat, immediate survival required adjustment. Alvarenga had years of offshore experience. He understood fish behavior and seabird patterns. Once their stored food was gone, he began catching fish by hand. Small fish gathered beneath floating objects. The skiff itself created shade in the water, attracting marine life. By leaning over the side and moving quickly, he was able to seize fish directly. Hooks and line remained available, but hand catching conserved gear. They consumed the fish raw. Without fresh water, dehydration became the primary threat. In tropical conditions, exposure accelerates fluid loss. The men began collecting rainwater whenever squalls passed overhead. They used available containers, including fuel canisters that had been rinsed. Rain became essential. When it did not come, they improvised. Sea turtles surfaced near the boat periodically. Turtles are known to approach floating debris in open water. Alvarenga captured them when possible. The blood and bodily fluids provided limited hydration. The meat offered protein and fat. Seabirds occasionally landed on the skiff. These too were caught and eaten. Cordoba struggled with the raw diet. According to Alvarenga's later testimony, Cordoba had difficulty consuming uncooked fish and turtle meat. Nausea and refusal to eat weakened him. There is no independent record of Cordoba's physical condition beyond Alvarenga's account, but it is documented that his food intake was inconsistent. Sun exposure became constant. The boat had no canopy. During peak hours, heat reflected from both sky and water. Skin blistered, lips cracked, salt sores formed where wet clothing remained against skin. They used pieces of equipment and fish storage materials to create minimal shade. Sleep followed no stable schedule. The boat rocked continuously. Fear of falling overboard prevented deep rest. Sharks circled at times, drawn by discarded remains. Whether perceived as frequent or occasional, their presence reinforced caution. Time measurement dissolved. The GPS had failed. Watches eventually stopped. Days were marked by sunrise and sunset only. The horizon offered no reference point. Clouds altered the color of the sea, but not its direction. Alvarenga later described attempts to maintain routine: fishing in the morning, scanning the horizon, preserving tools, checking for approaching vessels. Cargo ships and distant lights were reportedly seen on multiple occasions, but none altered course. A small, open skiff is nearly invisible from the bridge of a large commercial vessel. As weeks passed, their bodies adapted to the raw diet to varying degrees. Alvarenga claimed his digestive system adjusted. He consumed fish, turtle, jellyfish, and occasionally small sharks. He used his hands rather than relying exclusively on hooks to conserve resources. Bones and shells accumulated and were discarded. Rainfall determined hydration cycles. When storms passed overhead, they drank freely and stored what they could. During dry stretches, thirst intensified. At times, according to later interviews, they drank small amounts of turtle, blood, or even urine. Medical experts later stated that such measures may provide short-term psychological relief, but limited physiological benefit. Mental discipline became as necessary as food. The absence of landmarks creates disorientation. Without fixed reference points, distance cannot be perceived. The boat moved constantly, but its movement could not be felt relative to anything stable. This condition has been documented in other long-term maritime drifts. Individuals report a narrowing of awareness to immediate tasks. Alvarenga later stated that he focused on repetitive activity: catching food, scanning clouds for rain, cleaning the boat, repairing minor damage. These tasks created structure. After approximately 4 weeks, Cordoba's condition worsened. He had reportedly refused food repeatedly and had become physically weakened. Alvarenga stated that Cordoba expressed despair and eventually stopped eating altogether. There are no surviving witnesses to confirm precise timing. What is recorded is that Cordoba died roughly 1 month into the drift. For a period of days, Alvarenga remained on the boat with the body. He later said he spoke aloud, attempting to maintain psychological stability. Eventually, he pushed the body into the ocean. Burial at sea occurred without ceremony. From that point forward, the drift continued with one occupant. Months passed. Ocean currents in the equatorial Pacific move generally westward. Scientific analysis conducted after Alvarenga's rescue confirmed that drift trajectories from southern Mexico can carry debris toward the central Pacific islands over extended periods. The route crosses thousands of miles of open water. Alvarenga remained on the skiff as it followed those currents. His beard grew long, hair lengthened, skin darkened and scarred from sun. Weight decreased significantly. When rain fell, he drank. When fish gathered, he caught them. When turtles surfaced, he captured them. There were periods of reported hallucination. Extended isolation, dehydration, and malnutrition can produce visual or auditory distortions. Alvarenga later described seeing distant landforms that disappeared and hearing imagined voices. Medical professionals who examined him after rescue noted that such experiences are consistent with prolonged isolation. Despite this, he maintained basic function. He did not abandon the boat. He did not attempt to swim. He drifted. Season changed gradually. Storm frequency altered. The equatorial sun shifted position slightly in the sky. The Pacific remained expansive and without visible boundary. By early 2013, the drift had already surpassed durations, documented in many previous maritime survival cases. Yet there was no measurement available on the boat itself. No calendar, no fixed record of days. Only sunrise and sunset marked continuation. The skiff moved west, carried by wind and current across the largest ocean on Earth. After Cordoba's death, the boat became quieter. For several days, Alvarenga remained beside the body. In later interviews, he stated that he avoided committing it to the sea immediately. The presence of another human form, even unresponsive, interrupted the isolation. Eventually, decomposition advanced under the heat. The body was placed overboard. The ocean closed without trace. From that point forward, survival depended entirely on one person's discipline. Solitary maritime drift alters perception. Without conversation, memory begins to cycle internally. Alvarenga later reported speaking aloud to himself. He also described episodes in which he believed he saw approaching land or heard distant engines that did not materialize. Medical assessments conducted after rescue indicated that hallucinations are consistent with long-term exposure, dehydration, and nutritional deficiency. Food procurement continued through repetition. Fish gathered beneath the skiff. Turtles surfaced periodically. Seabirds landed to rest. The methods remained unchanged. Catch, consume, discard remains. When rain arrived, he collected water. During dry intervals, thirst intensified. Physical decline was gradual, but measurable. Muscle mass decreased. Skin showed scarring from prolonged ultraviolet exposure. Saltwater contact produced lesions. Fingernails deteriorated. Hair and beard grew untrimmed. Time lost definition. Without tools to measure it, months cannot be distinguished from weeks. Alvarenga later estimated durations based on memory of seasonal weather patterns and the frequency of rain. Independent investigators reconstructed the timeline using drift modeling and reported departure dates. Ships were reportedly sighted at intervals. Large commercial vessels crossed sections of the Pacific along established shipping lanes. A small, open skiff, low in the water and without signaling equipment, offers little visibility at distance. No confirmed rescue attempt occurred during the drift. The equatorial current continued its westward movement. Scientific analysis after the event demonstrated that debris originating near the coast of southern Mexico can reach the Marshall Islands through this pathway over extended timeframes. The drift was not random. It followed established ocean circulation patterns. Psychological endurance became the primary barrier. Isolation extended beyond typical human experience. There were no markers of progress, no evidence of approach. The horizon remained unchanged. By late 2013, more than a year had passed since departure. The boat had crossed thousands of miles of open ocean. Alvarenga remained alive. Land appeared without warning. On the 30th of January 2014, after approximately 438 days at sea, the skiff approached Eben Atoll in the Republic of the Marshall Islands. Eben lies in the southwestern portion of the archipelago, a remote coral formation with a small resident population. The atoll rises only slightly above sea level. From a distance, it presents as a narrow band of green against open water. Alvarenga later stated that he initially believed the site might be another hallucination. As the outline remained stable, he allowed the current to carry the skiff closer. The boat had no motor and no navigational control. It drifted toward the reef line. Local residents noticed the vessel near shore. Accounts from Eben confirm that a man with long hair and beard swam weakly to land after the boat grounded near the atoll. He spoke Spanish and limited English. Communication required interpretation. Initial observations described him as thin but able to walk. His skin showed extensive sun damage. Ankles were swollen. He had difficulty maintaining balance. Despite this, he was conscious and coherent. Marshall Islands authorities were notified. Medical personnel conducted preliminary evaluation. Reports indicated that he weighed significantly less than his pre-departure estimate but did not exhibit organ failure. Dehydration and malnutrition were present, but not immediately life-threatening. News of his account spread rapidly. International media reported the duration of drift as more than 13 months. Drift modeling, conducted by oceanographers, later confirmed that prevailing currents could have carried a vessel from southern Mexico to the Marshall Islands over that time frame. Within days, arrangements were made for repatriation. Alvarenga was transported to Majuro, the capital of the Marshall Islands, for further assessment. From there, diplomatic coordination facilitated his return to El Salvador. He had departed Mexico in November 2012. He reached land in January 2014. The Pacific crossing was complete. In the months following his rescue, questions emerged alongside confirmation. Skepticism accompanied the duration of the drift. Surviving more than 13 months in an open skiff without propulsion challenged common assumptions about human endurance. Journalists and researchers examined the claim closely. Mexican authorities confirmed the 17th of November 2012 departure and subsequent search efforts. Families in Costa Azul acknowledged the missing fisherman. The death of Ezequiel Cordoba remained unverified, except through Alvarenga's testimony, but no contradictory evidence surfaced. Oceanographers analyzed current data from the Eastern Pacific. Drift simulations demonstrated that objects leaving the coast of Chiapas could travel westward along the North Equatorial Current, eventually reaching the Marshall Islands. The estimated duration aligned with the reported 438 days. Marine debris studies had documented similar transoceanic pathways. Medical evaluations also supported prolonged exposure. Physicians noted skin thickening, vitamin deficiencies, and musculoskeletal loss consistent with extended time at sea. While the body had endured severe stress, organ systems remained functional. Survival depended on consistent access to protein from fish and periodic rainfall for hydration. The event entered maritime record as one of the longest verified small vessel drifts in modern history. Alvarenga returned quietly to El Salvador. Public appearances were limited. His account was later documented in investigative reporting and in the book 438 Days by journalist Jonathan Franklin, based on interviews and independent research. The narrative remained consistent with physical evidence and oceanographic modeling. The Pacific that carried the skiff westward continues its circulation without alteration. Currents remain steady. Fishing vessels still depart from Chiapas. Small boats still travel beyond sight of land. Most return within days. One did not. For 438 days, a fiberglass skiff moved across open water, sustained by wind, current, and repetition of simple tasks. The ocean neither pursued nor spared it. It simply continued. In that continuity, one man remained alive long enough to reach shore. The horizon, unchanged, remains where it has always been.